My twin sister stole my identity and married my fiancé. Now she's asking me to raise her kids. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but here I am, still reeling from the events of the past 5 years. Buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. 5 years ago, I, now 32F, was living my best life. I had a great job as a software engineer, a loving fiancé named Eric, 34M, and a close relationship with my identical twin sister, Megan. Eric and I had been together for 3 years and were planning our wedding. Everything seemed perfect. Megan and I had always been close, despite our different personalities. While I was more introverted and career-focused, Megan was the life of the party. She bounced from job to job and relationship to relationship, never seeming to settle down. But I loved her fiercely and always tried to be there for her. The trouble started when Megan lost her job and apartment in the same week. Without hesitation, Eric and I offered to let her stay with us until she got back on her feet. Looking back, I realized this was the beginning of the end. At first, everything seemed fine. Megan was grateful, helping around the house and actively job hunting. But as weeks turned into months, I started noticing small changes. Eric and Megan seemed to be spending more time together, often whispering and stopping their conversations when I entered the room. I brushed it off as wedding planning surprises, not wanting to be paranoid. One day, I came home early from work, feeling under the weather. As I approached our apartment, I heard laughter, Megan's unmistakable giggle and a deeper voice that made my blood run cold. I opened the door to find Eric and Megan on our couch, clothes disheveled, lips swollen from kissing. The world stopped. I felt like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. Eric jumped up, stammering excuses. Megan just sat there with a smug smile on her face. I don't remember much of what happened next, just a lot of shouting and crying. I grabbed some clothes and left, staying with a friend for a few days. When I came back to talk things through, the apartment was empty. Eric was gone, along with most of his belongings. Megan had vanished too. They wouldn't answer my calls or texts. Their social media accounts were deleted. It was like they had vanished into thin air. I was devastated. How could they do this to me? How could my own sister betray me like this? I spiraled into depression, barely able to function. My friends and family, except for Megan, of course, rallied around me, trying to help me pick up the pieces. Weeks turned into months. I threw myself into work, trying to forget. I started therapy, which helped me process my feelings and start to heal. I was slowly but surely rebuilding my life. Then came the news that shattered my world all over again. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, about 6 months after Eric and Megan had disappeared. I was at a family gathering, finally feeling like I could face everyone without breaking down. That's when my cousin Sarah pulled me aside, a worried look on her face. "Amy," she said, her voice low, "I don't know how to tell you this, but I think I just saw Megan and Eric." My heart started racing. "What? Where?" Sarah hesitated. "At the courthouse. They were getting married." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The world started spinning, and I thought I might throw up. How could they be getting married? And why at the local courthouse when they had run away? But the worst was yet to come. Sarah continued, "Amy, there's more. When I saw them, Megan was using your name. She was pretending to be you." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Megan hadn't just stolen my fiancé, she had stolen my identity. She was marrying Eric pretending to be me. The next few weeks were a blur of police reports, lawyer meetings, and sleepless nights. We discovered that Megan had indeed stolen my identity, using my social security number and other personal information to create a new life with Eric. They had moved to a nearby city, where Eric had gotten a new job. Megan, posing as me, had even started working at a local tech company. The legal battle that followed was long and exhausting. Megan and Eric were eventually caught and charged with identity theft and fraud. The trial was a media circus, with our family's dirty laundry aired for all to see. Megan pleaded guilty, while Eric claimed he had no idea about the identity theft, thinking he was genuinely married to me the whole time. I didn't believe Eric for a second. How could he not know he was living with a different person, even if we were identical twins? But in the end, it didn't matter. They were both sentenced to prison, Megan for 5 years, Eric for 3. As they were led away from the courtroom, Megan looked back at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of defiance and something else. Regret? For a moment, I saw a flicker of the sister I used to know and love. But then it was gone, replaced by the cold mask of the stranger she had become. The years that followed were hard. I had to fight to reclaim my identity, untangling the mess Megan had made of my credit and professional reputation. I changed my name, moved to a new city, and started over. Slowly but surely, I rebuilt my life. I threw myself into my career, climbing the corporate ladder with a determination born from my ordeal. I made new friends, even started dating again, though it took a long time before I could truly trust anyone. My relationship with my family was strained. My parents were torn between their two daughters, and family gatherings became tense affairs that I started avoiding altogether. I couldn't bear to see the pity and awkwardness in their eyes. 4 years passed. I had just been promoted to senior software architect at a prestigious tech firm. I had a nice apartment, a small but loyal group of friends, and even a dog, a rescue mutt named Max who had become my constant companion. I was, if not happy, at least content. Then, out of the blue, I received a letter. From Megan. My hand shook as I opened it, unsure of what to expect. The letter was long, filled with apologies and explanations. Megan wrote about her struggles with mental health, her jealousy of my success, and how she had spiraled into a pit of delusion and desperation. She begged for forgiveness, saying she had used her time in prison to get therapy and turn her life around. At the end of the letter was a bombshell. Megan was pregnant. She was due to be released in a few months and was terrified of facing the world as a single mother with a criminal record. She asked if we could meet when she got out. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was still angry, the wound of her betrayal not fully healed. But another part, the part that remembered the sister I grew up with, the twin I shared everything with, felt a pull of sympathy. After much deliberation and several sessions with my therapist, I agreed to meet Megan after her release. The day of Megan's release arrived faster than I expected. I waited outside the prison, my stomach in knots. When Megan walked out, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the confident, vivacious woman I remembered. In her place was a pale, thin figure, her eyes darting nervously. "Amy," she said softly, her voice cracking. "You came." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We drove to a nearby diner in silence. Once seated, Megan burst into tears. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I know I can never make up for what I did. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know how truly, deeply sorry I am." I listened as Megan poured out her story. How she had always felt like the lesser twin, constantly in my shadow. How meeting Eric had made her feel special for once, and how the idea of stealing my life had started as a joke but quickly spiraled into a full-blown delusion. "I convinced myself that I deserved your life more than you did," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought if I could just be you for a while, everything would be better. It was insane, I know that now." As angry as I still was, I could see the genuine remorse in Megan's eyes. Years of therapy had taught me that holding on to anger would only hurt me in the long run. "I appreciate your apology," I said carefully. "I can't say I forgive you, at least not yet. But I'm willing to try and move forward." Megan nodded, wiping her eyes. "That's more than I deserve. Thank you." We talked for hours, catching up on the years we had lost. Megan told me about her pregnancy. She was having twins, a boy and a girl. She was due in 3 months and was terrified of facing motherhood alone. As we were about to leave, Megan hesitated. "Amy, there's something else I need to ask you. I know I have no right, but I'm scared. I don't know how to be a mother, especially not to twins. Would you consider helping me raise them?" I stared at her, stunned. "Megan, that's a huge ask. I don't know if I can do that." She nodded, looking down. "I understand. I want them to have a better life than I can give them alone. And who better to help raise twins than my own twin?" I left the diner that day with my head spinning. Megan's request was outrageous, considering our history. And yet, a small part of me couldn't help but consider it. These babies were innocent, after all. They didn't ask to be born into this complicated situation. The next few months were a whirlwind of emotions and difficult conversations. I met with Megan regularly, helping her prepare for the baby's arrival while also working through our past with the help of a family therapist. Slowly, I began to see glimpses of the sister I used to know. Megan was working hard to turn her life around, attending parenting classes and looking for work despite the challenges of her criminal record. She was determined to be a good mother, even if she was terrified. As Megan's due date approached, I found myself becoming more involved. I helped her set up a small apartment, bought baby supplies, and even attended her doctor's appointments. Despite my initial reservations, I couldn't help but feel a connection to these little lives growing inside my sister. The day the twins were born was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Holding my niece and nephew for the first time, I felt a rush of love I hadn't expected. But I also couldn't shake the thought that in another life, these could have been my children with Eric. Megan named the boy Ethan and the girl Emily. As I watched her with the babies, I saw a side of my sister I'd never seen before, gentle, nurturing, and fiercely protective. But I also saw her struggle, the weight of her past mistakes heavy on her shoulders. One night, about a week after the twins came home, I received a panicked call from Megan. Ethan wouldn't stop crying, Emily had a fever, and Megan was at her wit's end. I rushed over to find her in tears, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. "I can't do this, Amy," she sobbed as I took Emily from her arms. "I'm not cut out to be a mother. These babies deserve better than me." In that moment, looking at my broken sister and these innocent babies, I made a decision that would change all our lives. "We'll do it together," I said softly. "I'll help you raise them. We're twins, after all. We should be able to handle twins, right?" Megan looked at me in disbelief. "Really? After everything I've done, you'd do that for me? For them?" I nodded, surprising myself with how right it felt. They're family. And maybe this is how we start to heal. Together. The road ahead wasn't easy. We had to navigate co-parenting, deal with family and societal judgments, and continue to work through our own issues. But as the months passed, I found a new kind of happiness I never expected. Watching Ethan and Emily grow, seeing Megan become the mother and person she always had the potential to be, I realized that forgiveness wasn't just about letting go of the past. It was about creating a better future. It's been 3 years since the twins were born. Megan and I now live in neighboring apartments, raising Ethan and Emily together. It's not always easy, we still have our disagreements, and there are days when the pain of the past resurfaces. But we're working through it, day by day. Megan has a steady job now and is taking online classes to finish her degree. I'm still with my tech company, having negotiated a flexible schedule to accommodate our unique family situation. The twins are happy, healthy, and loved beyond measure. As for Eric, we haven't heard from him since he was released from prison. Last I heard, he had moved out of state. Sometimes I wonder if he ever thinks about the life he could have had, the family he missed out on. But those thoughts are fleeting. My life may not have turned out the way I expected, but I've learned that family, true family, isn't always about blood or perfection. It's about love, forgiveness, and the choice to stand by each other, even when it's hard. Ethan and Emily may have been born from the biggest betrayal of my life, but they've also become my greatest blessing. And Megan, despite everything, is still my twin. We're connected in a way that even her betrayal couldn't sever completely. Life is messy, complicated, and rarely goes according to plan. But sometimes, if you're open to it, the biggest plot twists can lead to the most beautiful stories. Story 2. I gave my estranged dad a chance and invited him to my wedding. But he refused to walk me down the aisle because his wife and golden child said it's only for them. I, 28F, never thought I'd be sharing this story, but here I am, still processing the events of the past few months. It's a tale of hope, disappointment, and ultimately, self-discovery. Buckle up, because this is going to be an emotional ride. To understand this story, you need to know a bit about my family background. My parents divorced when I was 8 years old. My dad, let's call him John, 55M, left my mom for his secretary, Sarah, now 50F. It was the classic midlife crisis scenario. He traded his family for a younger model and a fresh start. At first, John tried to maintain a relationship with me. We had weekend visits and he called regularly. But as time went on, those visits became less frequent, and the calls dwindled. By the time I was 13, I was lucky if I heard from him on my birthday and Christmas. Meanwhile, John and Sarah had a daughter of their own, my half-sister Lily, now 18F. From what little I knew, Lily became the center of their world. John doted on her in ways he never had with me. It hurt, but I learned to live with it. I had my mom, who was an absolute rock star single parent, and I focused on building my own life. Fast forward to 6 months ago. I got engaged to my wonderful fiancé, Alex, 30M. As we started planning our wedding, the question of my dad came up. Alex knew my history with John and left the decision entirely up to me. After much soul-searching and conversations with my therapist, I decided to extend an olive branch. I called John for the first time in years. To my surprise, he seemed genuinely happy to hear from me. We had a long conversation, catching up on lost time. He apologized for being absent and expressed regret for missing so much of my life. When I told him about my engagement, he sounded thrilled. Feeling cautiously optimistic, I invited him to the wedding. I even gathered the courage to ask if he would walk me down the aisle. John's response was enthusiastic. "Of course, sweetheart. I'd be honored," he said, his voice choked with emotion. For the next few months, John and I talked regularly. He asked about wedding plans and even offered to contribute financially, which I politely declined. Alex and I had it covered. I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild our relationship. I should have known it was too good to be true. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from John. His tone was different, hesitant, almost sheepish. "Honey," he started, "there's something we need to discuss about the wedding." My heart sank. I knew whatever was coming wasn't good. John cleared his throat. "Sarah and Lily have some concerns about me walking you down the aisle," he said. "They feel it's not appropriate, given our history." I was stunned. "What do you mean, not appropriate? You're my father." He sighed. "I know, but Sarah feels that since I wasn't really there for most of your life, it wouldn't be right. And Lily? Well, she's always dreamed of being the only one I walk down the aisle." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So, what are you saying, Dad?" There was a long pause before he answered. "I think it would be best if I didn't walk you down the aisle. But I'll still come to the wedding. We can have a dance at the reception instead. How does that sound?" I was too shocked to respond. John rambled on about how this was for the best, how he didn't want to cause any drama. All I could think was how, once again, he was choosing his new family over me. Finally, I found my voice. "Let me get this straight," I said, my tone icy. "You're refusing to walk your own daughter down the aisle because your wife and the daughter you didn't abandon think it's not fair to them?" John's voice took on a defensive edge. "Now, honey, it's not like that. We're just trying to keep everyone happy." "Everyone except me, you mean?" I shot back. "Do you realize what you're doing? You're proving, once again, that they matter more to you than I do." "That's not true," John protested. "I love you all equally. I'm just in a difficult position here." I laughed bitterly. "No, Dad, you're not in a difficult position. You're making a choice. And once again, you're choosing them over me." Before he could respond, I ended the call. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling a mixture of anger, hurt, and oddly, relief. Relief because now I knew where I stood. All those months of rebuilding, of hoping for a renewed relationship, had been a fantasy. I spent the next few days in a funk, alternating between crying and raging. Alex was incredibly supportive, offering to call John himself, an offer I declined, and reminding me that I deserved better. As the wedding approached, I had a decision to make. Should I still allow John to come to the wedding? Part of me wanted to uninvite him out of spite. But after talking it through with Alex and my mom, I decided to take the high road. I would let him come, but he would be treated like any other guest, no special dances, no mentions in speeches, nothing. The day of the wedding arrived. I asked my mom to walk me down the aisle, a request that brought tears to her eyes. "I'd be honored," she said, hugging me tightly. As I stood at the back of the church, arm linked with my mom's, I caught sight of John in the pews. He was sitting with Sarah and Lily, looking uncomfortable. Our eyes met for a moment, and I saw regret flash across his face. But then Lily leaned over to whisper something to him, and he turned away. In that moment, I realized something profound. The dad I had always longed for, the one I had hoped would suddenly appear and make everything right, he didn't exist. The man sitting in that pew was not that dad. He was just John, a flawed human being who had made his choices long ago. As my mom and I started our walk down the aisle, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I wasn't the little girl waiting for her daddy anymore. I was a strong, independent woman, marrying the love of my life, surrounded by people who truly cared about me. The ceremony was beautiful. Alex and I exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through all of life's ups and downs. As we sealed our union with a kiss, the church erupted in cheers and applause. At the reception, I danced with my mom, Alex's dad, and my best friend's father, who had been more of a dad to me over the years than John ever was. I laughed, I cried happy tears, and I celebrated the beginning of my new life with Alex. John approached me once during the reception, looking awkward. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he said. "I'm sorry about." "Well, you know." I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, just a calm acceptance. "Thank you for coming, John," I said politely. "I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening." His face fell at my use of his first name, but I had already turned away, heading back to my husband and our true family. As Alex and I left the reception that night, surrounded by sparklers and cheering loved ones, I realized that this day had given me more than just a husband. It had given me closure. I no longer needed John's approval or love. I had built a life full of love and support without him, and I would continue to do so. In the months since the wedding, John has tried to reach out a few times. Each time, I've been polite but distant. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm also not interested in pretending we have a relationship we don't. To those who might find themselves in a similar situation, I want to say this: you are not defined by the parents who let you down. You have the power to create your own family, filled with people who truly love and support you. It's okay to let go of the fantasy of what could have been and embrace the reality of what is. My story doesn't have a neat, happy ending where John realizes the error of his ways and we reconcile. Real life rarely works that way. But it does have a happy ending of a different sort. I'm married to an amazing man, surrounded by friends and family who love me, and I've finally let go of the need for approval from someone who was never going to give it. Sometimes, the happiest endings come not from getting what you thought you wanted, but from realizing you no longer need it.